Welcome back on Dynamo. Today I want to propose you a video about a series of video about the 9th edition for Warhammer 40k released by the Games Workshop. So in the description you can find also the playlist where you can find all the videos related about the core rules and advanced rules related about this edition. So now we can start to see all the rules that we have to know. So we can start talking about the rules. These are, we can consider advanced rules, but are still basic rules because there are really quite a lot of units that has one of such units, and there are also units that are explained that they are really common because, for example, there is the explodes from the vehicles and so on. So now we can go to see them in detail. And then we can start with benefits of cover when not in turn, and it does like it said. So you take a unit and it gains a cover light one, so only a +1 to the saving throw in the case that it's on open field. Eventually remember that there are units that can gain bonus ulterior bonus when they are in cover, and it depends by the shiny elements deterrence where they are to know if they're in cover or not eventually. So pay attention. Eventually also remember that it applies to the saving throwing, not to the invulnerable saves. So you can't improve the invulnerable saves with rules such one that increase the saving throwing, cause cover or so on. And remember also that this cover it applies only against shooting attacks, not melee one, because the cover apply only against shooting. Then we have the rule ignoring the benefit of cover. In this case, it depends by what it's written in the test about ignoring, because there are some that ignore the bonus of the cover based on the saving throwing bonuses that we've seen also before. Other that are about the abilities of the shiny elements and so on. Other about penalties and so on that can be gained from units abilities. Okay, so simply see what it's written. Eventually remember that it say that it ignore all the bonuses that the cover gain. So it means that it can also avoid the abilities of the terrain feature, like the obscuring trait. So remember that it depends by the amount, and ignoring obviously the cover itself means that you can't gain any bonus from the saving throwing because the shiny elements that you are in, so like tower, heavy cover, dance cover and so on. So remember simply this. And then we had the improving the benefits of the cover. In this case, if you are in any other terrain feature that it's not the light and heavy cover bonuses, you gain a 1 to add to your saving throwing. Instead, if you are in a light or heavy cover, you gain a +2 to your saving throwing. So it's really quite good. Moreover, you have to remember that you can't apply these increases in bonus in saving throwing to any invulnerable saves, just to remember you. And then we have the units of psychers. In this case we have a unit composed by more than one model usually, and we can select one of such models, and we can measure and apply the rules about the manifesting powers and deny the witch by that specific model. So we have to remember that it has to be done as usually, but the unit is not considered psychic for any other option that when it manifest or deny the witch test. So it's really quite comfortable about these type of things. And then you have the shoot again, that it does like the name itself says. So you can shoot again with that unit or certain weapons or something like this. Remember that there are different ways to shoot again, because there are, for example, units like the Eradicators from the new Primaris Prismarine, where you can shoot again, but only to the same target one. So only if you do that on the same target, you can do. And there are instead other units like the Aggressors, when you can simply shoot again, and in that case you can target a different one. So you can the first time do and the second time to another target. In that case, other than that specific talking about writing in the rules, you can select again the unit to shoot. So there are two different timing. So it's quite useful if you think that you can, for example, kill a vehicle and then shoot to the unit that has disembarked from that vehicle itself. So eventually pay attention and read how it's written, the part about being able to shoot again. It's the only thing that you have to pay attention. Anyway, remember that the shooting phase doesn't end until the unit has finished to shoot, even if it's going to finish and you have the rule that it says that you shoot that one again or so on at the end of the shooting phase. The shooting phase doesn't end till you have finished all those shooting. And then we had the non-shooting abilities. In this case, you apply these rules in the shooting phase, but you are not involved about the shortcoming of the shooting phase itself. So you can use such abilities even if you have fallback, you advance, or you are in the engagement range of an enemy. So it's really quite comfortable about using this. It's simply the time where you are going to apply these abilities that is mind. And then you have always fight first and fight last. In that case, you have to remember that the player that has the turn has the precedence. So if your opponent is charging and you have a unit that always attack first, one of its unit will go for sure before, because it's his turn. So you can alternate after, but the first one it will be anyway his one. So pay attention about this. In the case you are affected by the rule always attack first and always attack last, simply they annihilate each other, and it's as usual normally because they conflict but they are not taking any effect. So remember that anyway the player has the precedence on the rule in that case. And then there is fighting with individual models. There are certain units or some rules that let you make the pile-in and fight by single models in a unit. In that case, you can fight as usually or limited by the rules that are applied, and that models can make the close combat and then consolidate. But you have to remember that the pile-in, the consolidate must always end in coherency. So you can't make that the model exit from the coherency itself. So remember that there is simply such limitation. And then we had the fight again. Remember that this is important. It's like choosing twice the same unit. So it means that you can fight and then what happens? And you can, when you apply the fighting again, you can pile in, attack, and consolidate again. And remember also that if you are charging, you can fight twice while being first, so attacking first. This is quite important. Eventually remember that there are eventually units that can interrupt such a sequence, but still you can fight after it. And remember that the fight phase doesn't end till all the eligible units have fought. So with this fighting again, you go and consolidate and finish in the engagement zone of a unit that has not yet fought. That unit now can fight. So the fight phase and only when all the units that can fight has fought. And then we have an important rule that it's attacker's priority. It means that if two units are conflicting, it applies the attacker's one. So for example, if there is a unit that always hit on 2+, and the defender that it can be only hit on 6+, you apply the attacker option. So remember that this is quite important to solve a lot of eventually questions that can happen. And then we had the morals priority. In this case, it's about when you have conflicting about having always passing the moral test or always failing the moral test. In this case, the priority is about always pass. And in the case that it can be that some rules, for example, make always free more models, or that it prevents models to flee, it applies that it prevents models to flee. So it's the defensive way about such rules to apply. And then you have the resurrected models. In this case, you can exclude the models that were destroyed and return to a unit in the same turn for moral test purposes. So it's a way that you can, in a sort of way, prevent or reduce the losses when you do the moral test. And then we had the rule explodes. There are some times that where the model it explodes and can make damages. Remember that it always the play that control that model to roll if it explodes and the damages that it causes, even on the around units. So it's the players that suffer the explosion that make the throwing. And then we have the repositioned or replacement units. So the reposition is about picking a unit and set up again in another place. The replacement units are units that simply going to substitute the old ones for some reason. Simply remember about this, and we can go to see the details about this type of units. The first point is that the rules that are triggered by or apply to the units that are set up on the battlefield as reinforcement are also triggered and apply to the units that are set up in such a way as the ones that has been repositioned. So remember that if you reposition a unit, you can suffer from the same bonuses and maluses of coming from the reinforcement in the case that there are any, or there are units that can apply them to units that do such things. The second and first point I want to treat them at the same time, because the models that has counted as arriving from the reinforcement are counted as having moved of the maximum distance that is available to them, and they can't make a normal move, a advance, or a falling back, or even remain stationary the turn that they arrived. They count as having moved, so they can't do anything else in that movement phase about moving. The fourth point is that the units that are within the engagement range doesn't count as falling back if you remove that unit from that combat and you set up this unit on another part of the field or so on, because it means that you can act normally. So you can, for example, make the shooting, make the psychic powers, and make the charge again. So it's quite important to understand this point. The fifth point is that the units that advanced this battle round are counted as having advanced even after they have been repositioned on the battlefield. Obviously, it's applied to the units that are set up again, but they're still alive. If you have the replacement of these units, the new ones are not counted as advancing, even if they are the same unit, because they are another unit technically. And I want to treat the sixth and seventh points together, because if you go into reposition a unit, not replacement, the replacement simply doesn't count about this because it's another unit. In the case you make a repositioning, you can't recover the destroyed models or the wounds that a model suffered. So you keep as it is the unit and place again, set up again that unit in another place. Simply you can't make that the unit come back to its fully potential usually. So remember that if you have some losses and so on, you keep those losses. The 8th point is similar to the 6th and 7th, and it's about that the rules and so on that affected that unit, because for example for stratagem, psychic power and so on, they continue to affect that unit for their specific duration even if they are repositioned. And the parts that, for example, the abilities that you gained or lost because you were in an hour or so on, when you go out of the tower, they stop to working. So you have to remember that you have to pay attention which are the malus and bonuses that you can scroll off or you must keep. So remember that there is such limitation. Obviously, if it's a replaced unit, it's another thing, because it's not the unit that suffered from that maluses or gained those bonuses. As we have seen, the most part of these rules are based on common sense, so they are not so difficult, but it's a good thing that they are specified because they can solve a lot of troubles, a lot of problematic issues that can happen. So good thing that everything is specified in the way that they can solve everything from the beginning. Anyway, from Dynamod it's everything. I invite you to put a like on this video, to subscribe to the channel, to ring the bell, and to comment this video if you are interested in something about this video or you want to suggest me some arguments for other videos. I hope to see you again to the next time.